Hello and welcome to Releasing Your Inner Dragon. I am Marie Mullaney and I'm one of your hosts here today. I am a fantasy author and a YouTuber with a world building channel. With me, as always, is my co-host, Drake.
Max Alexander Drake. Drake, for everybody who knows me. I'm an award-winning novelist, former lead fiction writer for Sony's Epic West Net, teach writing all over the world. I write. And we do this podcast, and it's a lot of fun.
As always, hit the like button, subscribe down below, add us to your favorites, share our podcast with other people. It helps us get exposure, and it helps us encourage us to keep making these podcasts. So today, we are going to talk about our trilogy.
Well, they don't even know it's a trilogy yet. You just spoiled it.
To those of our viewers who are returning viewers, you know that we have started plotting a novel. Well, I started plotting a novel and Drake was advising, and then we got really excited about it. So now we're doing the novel together.
Yeah. And then I accidentally turned it into a trilogy and
and then, it got a little big and we're like, if we split it here.
if we each tag team it. So yes.
So here we are. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about the massive changes that we've made over the course of discussing the start of the novel and specifically the characters and some of the world building elements that have led us here and so on.
And also, yeah, the whys, because one of the things that you have to think about that I don't think a lot of people do, and obviously this is different, especially now since we've decided to co-author it. So that adds a dimension that people might not be aware of, like how do you have two creatives that work together and all that, and that is difficult. I don't think it's gonna be difficult with us just because we've meshed so well together for the last couple of years, but one of the things that some of the changes were business change, like from a business standpoint of rolling a story out and getting things accomplished. Things changed, from that. They changed from the world building. They changed from new ideas that each of us threw out. So it is an amalgam of a bunch of different kind of aspects that caused us to go down the path that we went down. And so I kind of hoping that we're going to go through not just here's all the changes that we made because we're so brilliant and great storytellers, but it's also like, well, kind of business wise sent us this path, and the fact that we're co-writing it now sent us down this path. And so there's a lot of kind of things that have spawned these changes.
And I guess let's talk briefly just before we get into the actual plot elements. Let's just talk about, if you co-author something with someone, make sure that you do have a clear understanding of how the business relationship is going to work. I'm not saying you need to define a contract, right? But you do need to make sure that you talk about things like the cost of a cover design, who's going to pay that, or are you going to try and get it traditionally published, or, what is your approach going to be? So you do need to have those discussions, because what you don't want is to reach the end of the line and then someone goes, oh, I thought you were covering that, or, whatever. It's like, no, my dude. Yeah.
So one of the things I would recommend is creating an agreement. So I'm a handshake kind of guy. I always have been. And my honor has always dictated that if I get in a relationship with somebody and they screw me over, I bow out. I would rather bow out with my honor intact than try and fight some silliness. So agreements for me should never be used. And if you do the agreement correctly, I think you'll never use it. So what it really forces you to do is to sit down and do a very detailed list of, these are the expectations, these are where everything is at. And so that everybody can go, oh yeah, I didn't even think about it like that. And that's really all it, for me, all the agreement is a way to sit down and work out the details that maybe one party or the other isn't thinking about. And so that when you've worked through the agreement, everybody now understands what's going on. And then, yeah, now you have an agreement, which is nice. And you can refer back to it if somebody's like, you know, if somebody pulls a politician and be like, no, I never said that. It's like, well, yeah, you did right here. But the reality is, I mean, I don't partnership with people that I'm not personally invested in. And so that makes it a little bit nicer.
But like, for example, we are planning on a June release. So there you go. If you want to buy the book, look forward to a June release. But the reason why we're looking for a June release is because of Comic-Con.
Yep.
Because Comic-Con is a really good platform to launch these things on. So that's a good business decision. But if we're going to launch a book at Comic-Con, that means we need to do a limited print run so that the book can go on sale at Drake's store. You know, you can't go to Comic-Con with no physical books. That's what people want to buy there.
Yep.
And that means we're probably going to have to spend $900 or something like that in order to kind of hit the sweet spot and make 500, get 500 books printed from a small press. So that cost needs to be understood by both parties and agreed to upfront, because we're going to need to split it. And those are important discussions to have up front.
And that's just way, like I said, just make sure that everybody just kind of has expectations of what's going to go on. Plus the back end and everything else. And I mean, the nice thing is that since I'm already doing, this is for you guys, since I'm already doing Starving Writer Studio, and I've got the Genesis Saga coming out, I've got the Drake's Writing Vice coming out, I've got, 2 other authors, maybe 3 other authors putting stuff through Starving Writer Studio. We've got the 20 novel Realm of the Dying Sun series. So, having an American arm that already has, we've already got the marketing team, we've already got the websites, we've already got the store, we've already got the typesetting, we've got internal everything, because we are a full-fledged publisher. And we have the contact with, we have a printer that we use, that we have a great relationship with here in the States, that give us pretty good deals, because we do not Random House worth of printing deals, but they don't print in the States anyway, they print in China. And I actually do have contacts in China. I don't know how strong they are now. I mean, I haven't done anything since before the shutdown, so I don't know what's going on with China and my contacts.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on anything right now. They're not doing well over there.
Yeah, but I mean, even in that case, there's a couple of things when you go to China. You have to have 4 months lead time. So if it's coming out in June, we would have to be 100% finished and 100% typeset and 100% ready to go to press 4 months minimum, because that's how long it takes to get it. And also you have to order way more. Like, really, if you're not ordering at least 5,000 copies,
it's not worth it. The shipping alone.
Yeah, it becomes, that pretty much becomes the minimum. And while it's like, oh wow, but I can get them for whatever, 75 cents a piece. Well, you got to store 5,000 copies of books, because you're not going to sell 5,000 copies tomorrow. No. I'll sell, I mean, it depends. It's been a while, but like usually when I drop a new book just at Comic-Con, I'll sell maybe 400 or 500 copies over those 4 days, which is nice. I mean, I don't know of any other author that can sell 500 copies at Comic-Con. However, that still would mean I would have 4,500 copies sitting in my garage, which kind of takes up a lot of room.
The other thing is, if you are not in the United States, especially if you are in Europe, I can't speak for Canada, but if you are in Europe and you do anything to do with the United States, and if you have published through Amazon, you'll know this as well, you have to fill in an IRS form called the W-8 BEN form. And it declares that you are not a US citizen, you are not generating the money in the US, but you're doing your money generating activities outside of the US borders. And that means that the entity that is paying you royalties is not required to have any withholding taxes to pay to the United States government, because you, the author, pay tax in your country on royalties. Right. So just in case you are in Europe and listening to us.
Well, it's the same thing for us
That
going
form
out.
is important.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same thing for us going out. You know, for the stuff that I do overseas, I have to deal with taxes, you know, at least tax forms, because yeah, for the most part, it's why you have an accountant. It's, you let them handle this stuff, because it does get really confusing, and I can barely add 2 + 2, so much better at grammar.
International tax laws is a bit of a beast, but it is kind of important to understand what you need to fill in. But mostly, if you publish through Amazon, they have a very easy process where you fill in the form on Amazon's site, and you digitally sign it, they store it, and they're like, okay, you're done. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it does make it easier.
Yep. All right. So that's
Yep.
business side out of the way.
Business.
But I think you touched where I thought you were going to go, was just the physical act of working with someone else. And so, you know, I got a pretty long history of working with others. You know, when I was working for Sony, I mean, you know, there's 120 people that were working on EverQuest Next. Now that included managers and artists and programmers and animators and, you know, devs and, you know, me and the writing staff and stuff like that. So we all have our own different jobs, but still, that's a lot of creative minds that all feel that they're doing the right thing. You know, I did that project with Larry Elmore back in 2015. The Realm has 3 other authors on it. Me and you are now doing this. I've got a business partner for my Drake U stuff. So, like, relationships are tough at the best of times, but when you get into art, I think that really can cause. I mean, how many bands do we know that broke up, you know, after they had a hit album?
Yeah, over creative differences, as they call it.
Right. It's like, wait a minute, you literally were a starving band out of your garage. You've now made millions of dollars, and you're going to split up because so and so wants to change a line of your lyrics. Like, what the crap? So that's, you know, for me, the nice thing is, and the people I hang out with, you know, you, Marie, and everyone else, I gravitate away from people who have artistic pride. And we all know these people where they're like, you can't tell me anything. It's all about me and my art. And I don't care about nothing else but me and my art. And it's like, dude, first of all, no one is the sharpest tool in the shed. No. You know, everybody can come up with great ideas. Everybody. And then it's just really the negotiation part of it is having everybody agree on what the best idea is. So like the last time me and you plotted, it was a lot of that. I was like, well, so I think we kind of should think about it in this light. And then that will make you go, oh, okay, I didn't think about that. Okay, well, what about this? And then you'll throw out stuff that'll make me throw out stuff. And eventually we worked out to this where we were both like, oh my goodness, this is a brilliant idea. Now where the idea came from, no one knows, because it's part mine, part yours, part of, you know, a mixing and melding of the two. And that's where true creativity comes, I think.
And that's the best. It's the best kind of collaboration where you, at the end of it, you're looking at the ideas and you're like, this is fantastic. And I don't know who came up with it. And it doesn't really matter, because it's not about who came up with the idea. It's about getting to the best idea.
Yep.
And you have to be open to changing your ideas. If you marry an idea, you're going to end up getting very hurt at some point. Yep. Because not everybody's going to like it.
Yep. For me, it's always about the why. So like, I remember one time I got in an argument with one of the other writers of the Realm, and we had this idea that we agreed on. It was a really good idea. And then somebody else, one of the other writers, threw out an idea that I thought was better. And so did the other 2 of the writers. And so one was like, no, I like this original idea. And this, you know, we just started arguing about it. It was really just me and him. And about 5 minutes in the argument, I started thinking about like where everything came from. And I'm like, okay, I just want us to go on record and say that the idea that you're fighting for was my idea. And the idea I'm fighting for was his idea over there. like, I just want to, because it was just funny to me. And I was like, I just want to put this on record that I'm actually fighting against my own idea for somebody else's idea, because it is a better idea. And here's why. Like, I just don't care. I don't care about my ideas. I care about what becomes the best idea. And I think that if you approach it with a why, so me and one of the realm authors yesterday were talking, there's this big thing that we've still been trying to work out, because again, it's a 20 novel thing. We've got a lot plotted out, but come on, we're going to figure out a lot along the way. And so there's this thing, and I think I fixed it. I really do. Over the last week, he's been doing some other stuff, and I've been doing some other stuff, and we haven't really had a chance to talk. And I feel like I've stumbled upon a great solution. So yesterday when we were talking, I went, here's my solution. And he was like, I don't like that. Okay, why? He goes, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me. I'm like, okay, well, here's why I think it works. And I was like, this is what readers are going to feel because of this. And he was like, all right, I didn't think about any of that stuff. So yeah, maybe, that does sound really good. Give me a day to kind of think about that. So it's still being open to, just because you don't feel that it's the right idea, you have to have a reason for what that feeling is.
I mean, I guess it is fine to go, I'm not sure that makes me feel right, but you need to then explore it and be like, okay, but why does it not feel right? When we were doing, so we did a big plotting session apart from the podcast,
right.
When we first decided to do this. And one of the discussions that we had was around the age of the female character, around Guri's age. And Drake wanted to make her a little younger and potentially look towards making some changes to make her available as a love interest, a kind of shared love interest. I said why I wasn't fond of the idea, and we spoke about it and thrashed it out a bit and said, okay, but if we do it like this, then we avoid the pitfalls that I most want to avoid, that the things that don't make me happy about it. And we do incorporate some of the things that would make this a better story. And
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it like that, because I was afraid that you were going to say that we do add some things that make Drake happy. Because I'm like, nothing makes me happy. It's just the story. So I love that you said, because that I think is the big mindset that a lot of artists, even on your own projects, I think they lose, that they go, oh, this makes me happy. I don't give a crap about you. I don't give a crap about me. So I don't even plot my own stuff alone. So one of my best friends, we've been best friends since elementary school. He's an engineer. I've talked about him on the podcast before, Charlie. He's not a writer at all, but he's my co-creator for the cartoon that I'm creating. But he's plotted almost everything with me, because the dude, my brain doesn't think like an engineer. It just doesn't. And his brain doesn't think like an artist. And so it's this beautiful marriage. But I think the other reason why it works so well is he knows he's not a writer and he's not offended when I'm like, okay, here's why that's not going to work, because X, this, because I know psychology, and I know reader psychology, and I know fan psychology, and that's what I study, and that's what I push, and that's why I say it's always about the reader. And so he can just be this idea machine and just spit stuff out at me that's just insane. He's like a wood chipper of ideas. And I just stand there in front of the exit port and just get pelted in the face with billions of wood chip ideas. And then I pick the ones out that really shine. But that's what we did, and that was every time that we've been plotting on this, especially once we shifted over to let's do this together, as opposed to, I'll just be here to help you out I'll give you some ideas or whatever. You had that same, and I knew, I wouldn't have gone into this. Well, I wouldn't even do this podcast with you if you didn't have the same attitude. So it's, obviously I knew all this stuff up front, but still, if you are going to look for somebody to co-write, it's not about their skill level. It's not about their creativity. It's not, all of that stuff is important, but I think the most important is, do they have that attitude of, I don't care about my ideas. I don't have any artistic pride. So it's the same thing, with when I'm doing my own personal things, that my name is the only thing on, I'm still taking advice from my beta readers, my alpha readers, Charlie, other writer friends of mine, where they're like, you know what, I think you should do X. And I go, okay, why? And they're like, well, I think that it would have this impact on the reader and improve this part of the story, and it'd be actually more dynamic because of this. And I'm like, wow, okay. I didn't think about that. The other thing I wanted to add real quick, because you were talking about chasing rabbits. I can't tell you how many times, especially plotting the realm, because it was so huge, where somebody thought an idea, or I thought an idea. Let's just go there. I would throw out an idea and I'd go, okay, I don't like this at all, but let's chase this rabbit. Like, and we got to the end of it and I was like, yep, doesn't work. And I said it up front. I literally was like, so I don't like this idea, but what if X? And the other guys are like, yeah, I don't really like that idea. I don't either, but let's go down this path. Let's make sure that it's not a good idea. And that may sound like a waste, but it isn't, because not only do you see things that are definitely not going to work, which could save you time in the future going down other paths that are similar, but you also, nothing is 100% bad. So like there's little elements of it that you're like, okay, that is actually cool. I hate it in this element. And then a week later, a month later, whatever, you're going down a different path and you're like, oh, remember this thing from that thing that didn't work? It would work beautifully here. And so I don't think thinking about stories ever is a bad thing, even if you're chasing a rabbit that you're definitely not going to use.
I fully agree with that. Like, and I think that it is always worth chasing the rabbit, because you might not like where it ends, but maybe you can find something along the way that's useful.
Yep.
Okay, so that long preamble out of the way, let's get into what we actually did, and why.
So, for those of you who are listening, we've talked about whether we should hold some stuff back or not hold some stuff back, and we've just decided to just kind of lay it out on the ground. Just show our hands. You know, I don't think it's gonna, if you hear us plot this, you still, even though it kind of spoils a few things for you guys, you're still gonna have plenty of unexpected turns and twists, because once we get into the writing, all bets are off. So plotting is great, but it really is just a foundation. And yeah, the final house may have the same walls as the blueprint had, but the colors of the walls might change. They might go from stucco to granite to glass to who knows what's going to, we might put a fireplace inside the wall, who knows. And so, hopefully you guys will follow us through the whole thing and then get the benefit of reading the story, but we are going to just spoil the crap out of it. We're just not going to hold anything back.
Yeah. So a lot of it is going to end up spoiled, but let's start with the things that have remained the same.
Mm-hmm.
The people came to this world on a spaceship that they believe is they don't believe anything about it because they don't know about it, but that was kind of an Ark spaceship. So they traveled from a dying Earth on the spaceship to this world. Now, when they found this world, the people on the spaceship at that time thought that the AI would terraform this hydrogen atmospheric world. So this is a world with a solid core and so on, although its gravity is slightly higher, but it's a world with a hydrogen atmosphere. And they thought that the AI would, terraform it into an oxygen atmosphere. But the AI decided that it could not be done. And in order to enable people to live on the world of Shaddau, it had to transform the people. So there were, of course, a rather substantial group of people who were not happy to be transformed into hydrogen-breathing human equivalents. This did not please them. And this led to a breakdown in communication between the AI control in the Ark and the settlements of the people on their floating cities, right? Which the AI helped them establish as a kind of intermediary step to going below the cloud level and settling on the planet proper. So this severance of communication is what basically created the apocalyptic conditions, and the knowledge and control of the AI got lost. People lost the majority of their scientific knowledge over the course of generations, and science, which is basically through nanobot manipulation, became magic. And that's the world we live in now, one where, crafters are regarded as making magic, when in fact what they're doing is manipulating reality by the use of nanobots. Now, these nanobots need to be constantly refreshed. because of like the radiation and so on. And that's kind of the limitation on magic. Okay. So that's kind of the backstory to the world. And that led us, I think, to some very interesting areas. And specifically, it became a question then around what we do with the AI. Now, one of the things that I wanted to avoid up front was like a Terminator clone of fight the AI. And Drake agreed with me on that one. So that's why we discussed that instead of the AI becoming an opponent that must be beaten, it becomes a question of get the AI to a place where it understands, like, it can't just force people into this, and that it must not go too far. Because the problem is the AI's end goal now is to go all the way to making people into what amounts to Doctor Who Cybermen with a kind of hive mind, like controlled by the AI himself, or itself rather. AIs don't have sexes, so itself. And that control is because it's like, well, they didn't listen to me. They now want to do the stupid thing. So, I'm just going to.
Independence becomes the enemy.
Yeah.
Independent thought, independent action. It is so much more efficient if everybody just worked together in one unison. But that's such a programming kind of thing.
Yes. So that's the AI's kind of goal. And the overcome is not really about killing the AI. It's about teaching the AI that actually, yeah, sure, maybe it would be efficient, but that's not humanity's strength. That's we're not bees. We work in a different way.
Yep. Yeah. And then the only thing I wanted to add there is, so whatever happened during the rebellion, that severed the AI from this did cripple the AI's ability to, basically have control over things. So as the generations have been going by, the AI hasn't lost its goal. It still thinks that it needs to help these people. It needs to, get them to the point where they are able. So it completes its mission. Its mission is to make these people able to live on this planet.
Yep.
And so that's the reason why over these last, 5, 6, 8 generations, humanity has evolved away from it and doesn't even remember it because it doesn't have a direct connection to them.
Yeah. Sometime I might talk about like the world building around this, but I think that requires like quite a session on by itself.
Right.
Just in terms of my decisions on hydrogen worlds and why people are blue and what kind of skeletons they have and so on. But in terms of so that was our discussion in terms of the bigger kind of arc around the background of the world and the story and so on. Then we started talking characters. Now, if you had been listening to us in the previous one, we'd settled on Buri as the female POV and the terrorist, but we've actually changed that because after a long discussion, we decided that Lyron, the noble kid, is actually a better POV, but we changed him quite dramatically.
And even his father.
Yeah, we changed his father quite dramatically as well, although his father's still like just very despicable human being.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, so here's my train of thought on characters. So a lot of people are like, oh, I love my characters. That always makes me cringe when you say you love your characters, because it means that you have given them more authority than they deserve. The reality is the character is a tool to deliver the theme to the reader. They're not real. They have a job. And so when I go creating characters, it's almost like a job interview. So the story that we kind of had loosely plotted out in that first session the terrorist character made sense to help do the thematic elements that we were doing. When we went down this arc of the AI and the, having this growth arc for the AI, as well as the growth arc for the characters and the planet and the races and everything else, the terrorist no longer could deliver those thematic elements from a story standpoint. And so, again, it's not about what you like. And I'm using the proverbial, not Marie.
No, I know.
It's about what the story needs. And so once that happened, that's when I started throwing out, it's like, okay, so let me throw this out at you. And again, one the big clue or hint that I can give you on collaboration is never, try to be a bull in a china shop. It always should start off with a discussion. So what do you think about, let me throw this at you. I'm kind of thinking something like this. What do you feel about this? And I know it sounds really silly, but if you both or all three or all four, like in the case of the realm, if you work in this environment of, I respect you, and so I'm not going to dictate to you anything about art, but here's kind of what I'm thinking. How does this make you feel? Because a lot of times they go, you know what? I kind of like that idea, but that just gave me, I can build off of that. And I can, what about this? If we go this branch off of that, and you're like, ooh, okay, but you know what? That gives me an idea of, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And everybody's giddy about it. And who knows who came up with, the original stump and then all the branches and everything. It doesn't matter. So, so that's where this came from. It was once we had changed direction on, and that's why, I say this, I've said this before in the plotting, I start with the plot before I start with the characters. I need at least what I call my tent poles. I need to know kind of how it's going to end. What is the overcome? Because that's the theme that I'm pushing. A couple other points would be nice, but I need to know what the inciting instance. Why has fate picked this person, and what is it going to do to get him into the story? And so with those 2 points minimum, that's what I can go, okay, so the character has to be this type of character, or it doesn't work to get him into the story. Like Finding Nemo. If Marlin isn't an overprotective parent, then the overcome doesn't happen. I mean, not the inciting incident doesn't happen. But when we meet Marlin in the very, very beginning, he's not an matter of fact, he's the typical dude. His wife is like, we've got 400 children to name. And he's like, this half's named Marlin, that half's name's Coral. I'm done. I'm going to go get a beer. Like, he's just such a dude that it's not even funny. And then in that first movie that takes 90 seconds, he gets to watch his wife and 399 kids get eaten in front of him. So when we meet him, a couple years later, when Nemo's the only kid and he's getting ready to go off to school for the first time. So in fish term, it's probably like 3 minutes, but in our world, we're going to kind of assume that it's been 5 years. That makes, we buy into the fact that Marlin is overprotective, but we also need Marlin to be overprotective, because if he doesn't come up against his son and tell him, don't you dare, go do something dangerous, then Nemo's not going to go do something dangerous, because Nemo's not a bad kid. And so it's the same thing here. Once we got into this, I was like, okay, well, what do you feel about, this? And kind of just poking at those. And that's why we went down the path of Lyron being the character that he is, because you also have to think about the fact, especially when you're dealing with multiple POVs, you have to think about the fact of each is a piece that's giving information to the reader. They're not two characters. They're one character that is giving information to the reader. They're just doing it from two different sides. And that's the beautiful thing about having multiple POV stories, is we can then go, okay, well, if this character is going to give this view of the world, then we can use this other character to come at it from a completely different direction to show this side of it. And then it's just a matter of going, okay, well, which makes more sense to deliver which thing from which angle. And so then we just kept bouncing it back and forth and bouncing back and forth until we came up with, we did change Burry some, not a huge amount, but we did change her some, because the original Burry didn't fit exactly with this new story arc. And then obviously Lyron changed a lot, and also replaced the terrorist, because the terrorist can't deliver the thematic elements of this new plot arc that we're doing. And so, yeah, it's a lot of thinking like that. And that may sound very analytical and very business, but again, if you
it's
don't,
it's
in my
actually
mind, if you,
very creative. When we were discussing Lyran, and I mean, you can see the results here, where in the beginning, like my first thought on Lyran was to have kind of a Nazi racist kid, right? Coming from a Nazi racist family, but one that's fallen on hard times. Now, his dad is still in power, and his dad is still a racist dude, but he didn't used to be.
yeah, we actually find out why he is the way
Yeah,
he is. And so we at that point, the audience should go, oh, yeah, you're still a jerk, but man, would I be any different?
yeah. So,
Because he's not the villain. We can make him relatable or likable later on because he's not the villain of the story.
yeah,
You know, we didn't
but
Jamie
he's not.
Lannister him.
I mean, his dad is still like pretty much like a I would say a pretty big jerk, because effectively his racism is grief transference, right? And it's not justified in any way, but it's understandable. And for Lyran, his father changed after his mother died. And that, of course, left, a grief-stricken boy who's now without his mother, and his father has become this cold, distant, hateful figure, which drove him into studies and books, and he becomes our studious character. And he actually now sneaks onto the team by like jippoing the selection process and so on. So he gets himself onto that team. And of course, like, he's not at all suited for the situation. So he becomes our fish out of water that also experiences all the worst parts of the world.
Well, he also brings in the compassionate side.
Mm.
Burry is that blue collar. I'm just trying to, I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. Like I've got my own problems. I've got things to deal with. Yes. Okay. There's big picture stuff, but I don't care. Not that she's not a caring person. It's just, just like most of us, life,
Yeah.
and so that's the angle that we take with her. And that's very relatable. And then we have this other character who kind of is in this very pampered environment from the outside. So from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, wow, look at that guy. I wish I was, that rich little kid, because he gets everything he wants. But then you take a look behind the curtain and it's like, oh, this guy is just doesn't have a great life. He and it's not horrible. It's not like his father's beating him or anything. That would be a different story. But it still comes at it from a different angle, so that because we're dealing, when we take that 10,000 foot elevated look and we start looking at the story, we're like, okay, what's the messages? Well, it's about compassion. It's about growth. It's about looking at things from the other side, wearing the other person's shoes for a while. That's kind of the messages that, and again, we haven't settled on a solid theme yet. That's still, we're still plotting, we're still figuring stuff out, but those are the ones that I feel are kind of in the ball running, in the race for getting that. And so by having a character that brings that, that sadness, but also that more altruistic, and he is an altruistic character, but that's where I'm kind of thinking is like, he's more in the, no, everybody should be helped. So he's kind of more in the, to take it political, he's more liberal leaning, whereas Burry is more of a blue collar, conservative. I gotta do this job to make this money, to pay that bill, to do this job, to make that money, to pay this bill. And so, that's the beautiful thing about having multiple characters. You can, instead of going, oh, every character has everything, because these are stories, these aren't real. The feeling that the reader gets at the end of it is real, and they should appear real to the readers. But from a technical structural standpoint, it's really about exaggeration. This one's going to bring this to it, this side, and this one's going to bring that, and so on and so forth. And that's the beautiful thing about when you look at it as a holistic project, as opposed to, oh no, I came up with this character named Burley and Burry, and I love her, and she's got this and this and this just like me. And so that's what a lot of people do that kills me. Their character is literally them.
It's very important. Like, I mean, everybody injects part of themselves into each character. Otherwise, it would be impossible to write, you know, because you have to have something on the character that you can attach to. But it's very important not to be attached to your characters, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I do love some of my characters, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to hurt them. And it doesn't mean they're not going to tell the story, you know. And I think the danger comes in when you become attached to the characters like they're you.
Yeah.
These characters are fake.
They're tools. Yeah. The only thing that is real in a story is the reader. Yeah. That's it. So every single element of that story should be built to impact the reader.
So the impact that we are looking for here is Burry as the practical person in a difficult situation that is basically solving one problem at a time without looking up. Like, and those steps are not taking her to a great place, but, you know, that's all that she can deal with at the moment. That is her overwhelming thing. Lyron's problem is that he's very sheltered. He has no real idea of how the world works. And he thinks, you know, he can make it work the way that it should work.
He's very idealistic, which right there, just to cut you off just really quickly, right there, when you start thinking in these more exaggerated terms, at the end of the journey, we know we're going to make them more complete characters. So very simple, Burry is obviously going to have, you know, what Lauren is going to bring to Burry is she's going to have to learn that you can't just look out for yourself. It's not good enough to just be in it for you. And Burry is going to bring to the relationship to Laron, you can't just live pie in the sky. There is still realities that happen, and there's consequences to decisions that he's never had to deal with. And so this is why thematic elements are so powerful and so important, because you start understanding that you're relating to the reader and everybody, and that's not the main theme. These are just one of their growth arcs, so it has nothing to do with the story, but I'm just saying, once you really start understanding the characters and start kind of exaggerating them to one side, you very easily see what they're going to have to grow, and these kind of become their fatal flaws and what they're going to have to get over, and so on and so forth. And that makes for some beautiful drama when you're writing through these characters.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual kind of like outlines. So when we were doing the tent poles for these characters, we said, okay, so starting with Lyron, which is where we started going, okay, what is Lyron's everyman moment?
Well, actually, we started at the end.
We started
with the okay, what is the overcome? Like, what are they going to have to do? And if you guys remember from the last time we did this, Marie's original concept, which was brilliant, was more of it was different. We'll just say that. Because your overcome was more of a city to city nature. You didn't really have the AI on a bigger scale. Everybody kind of had their own individual goals. And for one to succeed, the other had to fail.
Yeah.
Which is why the terrorist fit so well, because then his story arc was, oh crap, the means don't justify the ends. Like, you can't just slaughter everybody. And I think that's kind of where the idea probably subconsciously came, to take that and move it into the AI, because the AI kind of takes some of those terrorist traits from that character and kind of becomes that. So once we kind of worked through that and figured out that we have this big baddie, it was like, okay, well, what do we have to do? Well, we're going to have to obviously defeat this AI. And that's like what Marie said earlier, where the first thing she said, well, I don't want her just to Terminator beat the AI. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that either. It's like, okay, so what are we doing? And then that's when we went down that path and spent probably 15, 20, 30 minutes just chasing the rabbits of what are we trying to overcome. And that's where we came up with what if the AI, and I have no idea who said it, but what if the AI, was actually had convinced themselves that the only way to do their job was to terraform the people. I think it was you that actually put that out there, but I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. Let's chase that rabbit. And then that's what came down to it. So all of that led us to, well, now we know where the ending is. We came up with this, because then you start tying stuff in. It's like, okay, what's the Jurin for? Well, the Jurin is because the AI needs them so that they can continue to build their control over the planet to take back over, so it can actually do what it needs to do. So like the terrorist was trying to, in the original version, blow up the anti-grav to drop the thing to the planet. Now the AI feels that it's got the people good enough, and yeah, the humans are just going to die, but acceptable losses means justify the ends. So now what if the AI is trying to take it out of the sky? And so blah 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 blah. And so we just kept poking at it and prodding at it and chasing different little rabbits to come up with, okay, well, obviously the end is going to be they need to convince the AI that you've got to be more compassionate than that. You've got to take the individual into account. You can't just force everybody to be a worker bee or, a Cyberman for you Doctor Who fans out there. Actually, that was actually, I think the funniest thing that happened during that plotting session is she wrote Cyberman and I was talking about something else. But I read Cyberman. I was like, oh yeah, that's 100%. And then when I finished talking, she goes, I don't know. Do you know what I mean by Cyberman? And I'm like, because I don't think we ever really talked about the fact of how much of a Doctor Who fan I always say I'm the only American that has every single episode of Doctor Who, including the 13 episodes that were lost. So yeah, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. So it literally said everything to me when she wrote that. But so really it was coming up with the ending. The ending is where we then could backtrack to get to the everyman.
But it wasn't just the ending. It was specifically the false overcome and the real overcome that really informed also the decision to go with the trilogy.
Well, actually, that decision didn't happen until after all that. Because...
No, I know, but our first thought was, okay, they're going to do the false overcome, which will be fight the AI, right? Mm-hmm. It'll be we'll have the AI have a connection to like a satellite that has fallen, like a giant satellite, where you're fighting inside the satellite, like in the belly of the beast, like in a fallen monster type scenario, except it's a satellite. And they'll have this big battle there, and that's the false overcome. And then they'll return to the cities, and then they'll discover that the AI still has a connection point. And then they'll have to reach the real overcome.
Right. And then I was like, okay, but we also need to have the reconciliation with the father, and we also have to have this. And so then as we're like, what? Because I remember at one point I said, well, I guess we could do 4 acts.
Yes.
And then when we went down that path, I was like, no, because this is its own 3-act thing. And that's when I finally was like, I think we've created a trilogy. And she was like, what? And I was like, well, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And it was 3-act play stories. We were just trying to, so I mean, that shows you being able to be malleable. We were trying to shove, and I was literally like, I can't write a trilogy right now, even though I'm now agreed to do it. So it's like, I'm trying to my best to force this round or this square peg into a round hole. No, this will be one novel. It'll be a really quick little 80,000 word novel. I only got to write 40,000 words. This is what it is. This is what it's going to be. But unfortunately, the story's like, to steal Marie's word, my dude, I'm not going to be a simple little book, dude. Not with this. You've got too much. And so that's when I had to take a step back and go, crap. Yeah. I've created a monster.
And it's, but sometimes the problem is we could probably have trimmed storylines. We could have, and jammed it all into one book, but it would have been a truncated story, and it wouldn't have done justice to the thematic elements. And I think that both of us are excited enough about the thematic elements that we were like, yeah, no, we've got a trilogy on our hands. Now, when we went with trilogy, we also solved my problem with potentially giving Lyron and Buri a love arc, because my objection was I didn't want it in the first book.
Right.
They were too different for me for them to fall in love. But once it became a trilogy situation, that's a different story.
And they have
Then you
three
have
adventures
time.
together.
Yes.
Or at least three parts of an adventure together.
Yes.
Right. Well, it's one of the reasons why, like, one of the things that I love about Farmers and Mercenaries, the first book of the Genesis Saga, which nobody has ever really come to me and said this, but this is because it's still really exciting. But in the reality, the farm boy character doesn't do anything in the first book. He doesn't kill anything. He doesn't, you know. So normally, and that's what I was playing with, was in the trope of, in every other fantasy that you'll ever read, you get the farm boy, and by the end of the book, he's the best fighter, the best wizard, like he just left the freaking farm. And so one of the things that I did with the Genesis was I wanted to make sure that, no, he's a victim through that first book. And in the second book, he kind of has gotten at least enough where he's starting to feel like maybe he won't be an idiot in this new world that he's in. And then by the third book, he, you know, has much more command. I mean, it's a 5-novel series, so, you know, it continues to grow. But yeah, so that was the same thing with the romance here. We don't have to shove this romance into the first book. We can build a solid foundation of mutual respect and understanding of each other, that as their travels continue and as they have to come back together in the second book to do the next thing, and then the finality of all that, it just naturally grows between them, which then became a natural thing of like, if you remember in the original one, we had that it was, she had her romantic partner was in a coma, but he never did anything in the story. He was just a motivator, is all he was. And so when you have something that is something like that, where it's just a plot device, well, that could be anything. It could be a pet, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be literally anything. And so, you know, that was an easy switch. And then that was what made it where it was like, okay, yeah, she probably is a little younger then.
Yeah.
So,
and so,
you know, all those things fall into place if you're willing to be flexible.
Yeah. And that also led us down the path of, like, Lyron's mother's death being from the same disease that afflicts Buri's now sister.
Which means that it's going to affect Lyron on a personal level, and he's going to want to make decisions based off of that because of the pain that he's felt in his past. And yeah, it just all ties together.
Yeah.
And that's what you look for. Everything should tie together.
Exactly. So if I go back to our kind of overview, in terms of the team dynamics, because we have the two of them have very separate experiences with their teams. But now, and this is going to sound a bit callous from a writer perspective, and I'm sorry, but it's true, having 9 characters is too many. And that's what we have to start with, because we've got the 2 POVs, but they each have a team of people around them on the planet. Buri has 3 people with her, and Lyron has 4 people with him. So during the early part of their team travels, we're going to have to kill some characters. Sorry.
It goes back to my religion of the old gods. And this is me talking about the cartoon that no one may ever see, but the religion in that world is the world was created by a writer. And so in Guards, which I hope to drop next year, should have been out this year, but cancer. One of the guards is a devout follower of the old gods. And so he knows that he's a tertiary character. And he tells the other tertiary character, dude, do not let the story even know you're here. Don't tell your name. Don't do anything heroic. Don't try to get involved on anything. Because in that religion, it states that tertiary characters' only job is to die to be a moral lesson for the main characters. So if you know you're a tertiary character, don't get involved. Just don't. Now, of course, most tertiary characters think they're the heroes of their story. And they are. I should say all tertiary characters think they're the heroes of your story. With Guards and Fiend Folly, I've obviously gone very meta and made the religion real. But that literally is one of the things. So we have these 7 other characters that are all secondary or tertiary characters. So as we need to give lessons to Burry and Laron, that just means that somebody has to die to give that
Yep.
lesson. And it raises the stakes, and it, it makes it drama filled and all of that. And so it may sound really callous, but again, they're tools. They're tools to impact the reader. And so,
then,
yeah.
So they're going to go through their different kind of team arcs. Burry's is going to basically lurch from crisis to crisis while she's struggling with the morality of betraying her city. And
which is a larger scale of the way she sees life and what her characters is. So you're just exaggerating again. So not only is Burry the type of character that is just stuck in this, like so many of us are, we're all paycheck to paycheck people, and then one thing happens, like, oh, I now need new tires for my car. Where am I gonna get that $500 from? I don't have $500 for new tires for my car. Like, I'm actually waiting, and this may not be important to everybody else, but I live in the desert. So air conditioning systems here are about $12,000 to $15,000, and they last about 10 years. And we've owned the house for like 12 years now. And so, like, every summer when I turn on the air conditioner, it's always that, is this the year it's going to explode? And I'm going to have to somehow find $12,000, or we die. Like, we literally would just die without an air conditioner. You can't live in 48 degrees Celsius or 115 degree for Americans heat inside of a house. Yeah. So we all live that. And that's what Burry gives us. It gives us that everyman that is just, I live paycheck to paycheck. What I get today is going to be spent tomorrow to just be able to survive tomorrow. And so we exaggerate that in her story as she's going into this strange new world. Her whole story is going to be just a bigger version of that.
And then Lyron, on the other hand, has a really bad time with his team. They can't believe they've been saddled with this nobleman's son, and they think he's useless, which at the beginning, to be fair, he is pretty much, because, he doesn't know how the world works. He needs to wear a special protective suit to protect himself from the radiation, whereas the rest of them can survive as long as they spend some time in like tents and so on, like special kind of radiation-proof tents. He has to wear a suit all the time because he's a full human. So they have a very bad time with him until they find the burnt out husk of a satellite, which they think is the corpse of a fallen beast. And he manages to keep them safe in there, despite the fact that they think that it's taboo to go into this place. And he kind of saves them there. So his story is very much a story of like beginning to understand consequences, like the consequences of going out there without thinking through what's everything that all the burdens he's going to put on these people. Because he's like, but I can help them. Yes. Can you though? Can you help them?
And I should have said this when I was talking about Burry. It's kind of the same way with Burry, because now the exaggeratedness of her situation forces her to take a step back. So when she's in her life, when we meet her as the everyman, she's buried in the weeds. She can't see anything but the weeds. But once she gets down there and things become very life-threatening, and they become much bigger than just, you got to earn this money to make some food. You got to earn this money to keep your sister in the hospital thing that she's in. You've got to earn this money to do this. She now is able to kind of look above the weeds a little bit. Obviously it's a gradual growth, but just like Laron starts to learn that consequences are, decisions have consequences, actions have consequences. Burry, as she's going through this, is going to start learning, maybe we need to think a little bit more than just reacting. We need to be proactive. We need to take control of our lives. We need to plan it for the future. We need to actually go, well, maybe if I do these things next week, then the week after that, I'll actually be in a better place. And so, yeah, it's exactly what you're doing. And all of these things. And then we haven't gotten there yet, but that's where you start creating your scenes. You start going, okay, well, then I'm going to need a scene to show, first I'm going to need a scene that just shows Burry having bad stuff happen to her because she refuses to change. And same thing with Laron. And then it's like, okay, now what's the scene that makes her go, maybe maybe I should look at this a little different. And then what's the scene that really proves to her that she should look at it different? And then what's the scene when she backslides and it's like, nope, I'm going to go back to my old ways. And so you just start thinking about this, and that's how you start making these growth arcs in these scenes. And it's not that the scene is just that, but we're going to look for where they fit in scenes that drive the story that will also do that. And so it's a lot of alsos when you're creating scenes. You don't just do one thing in a scene. You're accomplishing a bunch of things in a scene.
Exactly. And it's important to think about that growth arc in terms of kind of the act structure. Like, this is where they're going to kind of learn this thing. And this is where they're going to, because you want to know where you want the character to be when that act finishes, so that they are ready then to hit whatever the next part is.
So let me go through, and I know I've said it on the podcast before, but let me go through the 4 kind of parts of a story, and then we'll look at the everyman and kind of wrap it up from there, because we have kind of mapped out Act 1. So I divide everything in, I pretty much only write in a 3-act play, and I divide it into 4 parts, because Act 1 is 25%, Act 2 is 50%, and Act 3 is 25%. So I just divide Act 2 up into 2 25% pieces. So Act 1 is usually where you're learning the person's world. The inciting incident hasn't happened. They're not in the strange new world of the story. They're just doing their thing. It's where I connect the reader to the character, make them care about the character, make them actually root for the character and worried for the things that the characters are worried about. Usually toward the end of Act 1 is where the inciting incidents can happen. Depending on the story, the Act 1 may continue. So like in Wizard of Oz, the inciting incident obviously is Dorothy being picked up by the tornado, because that's the point of no return. She can't change it after that. We're still in Act 1. We still have to set up, Oz now. We have to set up the Munchkins and the witches and the war and Oz and how to get home and all this other stuff. So it just depends on, these are flexible things. They're not like, oh, this is where the inciting incident happens every time. You just never know. The story's going to kind of help you figure that out. But that's still kind of the setup phase. And so we've kind of plotted that out in the last session, and then we ran out of time. The first half, Act 2, is really the learning stage, the learning the new world, the kind of figuring out how you're going to fit in this new world. It's the school of hard knocks. It's taking your lumps so that you can start, learning to get over those obstacles. And then there's a mid-Act 2 climax. There's something that happens. It's either an upturn or a downturn that is a major event. So like the one I always like to use as an example is the Oracle in the Matrix. He doesn't want to be Jesus Christ. He goes through all of Act 2. He learns, he learns Kung Fu. He learns about the Lady in Red. He learns about the agents. He's taking his hard knocks. Morpheus is kicking his butt and blah, 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 blah. He learns about, there's that scene with Cypher and where they're in the room, and it's like, I guess now you would have wished you took the blue pill. He learns the food is crappy. He learns that the accommodations are crappy. He learns that room service is crappy. Like all of these things. Then we get to the Oracle, and she says, "You're not Jesus Christ." And he's like, "Thank goodness. This is what I wanted." But that ends the first half, Act 2. And then the second half, Act 2, is where things really start rising in tension, because now we're starting to get really into what we have to do to actually, this is where you really start learning what the big deal is. This is where he really learns what his overcoming is in the Matrix, and so on and so forth. And that leads you up to the end of Act 2, where they feel like they have everything to overcome the story. They have the magic sword, they have the friends, they have the special armor, whatever. They've gotten everything they've learned how to use magic, whatever. And then at that point, they're going to go into Act 3. They've got a plan to overcome the story. However, it's a plan that keeps them on the wrong side of the theme. They don't have to change. They can take all this stuff that they learned. They can still be the same pig-headed person they were at the beginning in Act 1, and they're going to be able to overcome the bad guy. But that doesn't deliver the theme. So there's the false overcome, where they enact their plan and it fails. And then they have to quickly figure out how to tie in all the lessons they've learned to do the actual overcome, which is the end of our story. So those are the kind of the tent poles that I talk about where I want to know. And so once we figured out those for the big brushes, we were able to go back and go, okay, well, let's start with the Everman. We now know enough. What are we going to have to introduce? And it's a lot of just notes. And so I'll let you take over and kind of go through what we did with the Act One to kind of start understanding what we're looking for.
We started with Lyron because he was our least defined of the two characters. And we said, okay, what are the beats that we need to hit in Lyron's everyman moments? We have to establish that he's the son of a nobleman. So we've got to establish the noble council that rules the city-states. We have to establish kind of how that works. We have to establish that his father is an asshole and that he wasn't always an asshole, that his father changed when his mother died. We have to establish that this change in his father drove Lyron into the catacombs beneath the city, which of course means immediately that we need to establish that there are catacombs beneath the city. And in those catacombs, he found what we have codenamed Ghost in the Shell, which is a plot device that is also a third character that won't be a POV character, but will be a very important secondary character with its own growth arc. We have to establish that he's a failure in his father's eyes. We have to establish that his motivation is to make his father happy. And we have to do a little bit of world building, which is the 9-man council that rules the cities and the interaction between the cities. Because Bury, who is the bulk of our world building will happen through Bury, but she cannot give us the political view. Only Lyron can give us that view of the city. And then his inciting incident is that his Ghost in the Shell friend helps him kind of view the city and helps him, kind of just see things that he wouldn't otherwise see and use, what we know are camera technologies, but obviously what he just thinks are like a bird's eye view in the city. And this lets him see the machine cult, and I don't mean the Warhammer 40K, I mean the AI worshipping guys. The machine cult's like idea for bringing down the city to the ground, and like that they're going to use the Noddy falling to do this. And he tries to take it to his father. His father says, "Don't be ridiculous, boy. How could you possibly know this?" And kind of dismisses it out of hand. And he manipulates and cheats his way onto the team.
Right. So we skipped some things that we did kind of figure out with all this. Because again, you have to figure out enough of the world, enough of the story to be able to sit down and make a comprehensive list like this. So we kept the terrorist. We just made him a tertiary character, maybe not even a tertiary character, just a
concept.
Yeah. So basically there's a ragtag group of people that more than likely are controlled by the AI, that they've been sent in here as saboteurs and spies, because the AI needs to take the city to the ground so it can finish its job. And so the boy Lyron learns of this cult's plans. And then we were like, well, how does the spoiled noble boy that's sheltered learn this? And we came up with, the catacombs and the fact that that's where he learns computers, because they don't have computers anywhere else. And these are some ancient computers that most don't work. But again, we set him up to be much more intellectually based. So he's not strong, he's not fast, he's not violent, he's not brutal, he's smart and a bookworm. And again, that changes all that character. And so he has made this friend because he's a loner and, nobody likes him. And, he doesn't do what everybody else does. So he's weird. And so he's found this voice, this ghost in the shell that he's befriended. And so yeah, it's just a weird, you have to kind of have more than just.
Yeah, this list is the result of a long hours of discussion of going like, and if we make the cities work like this, and if we make the interactions like this, which, we have notes and recordings on and all of that kind of thing. But in the end, you put that down as like the beats you need to hit. And that is why I think season 8 of Game of Thrones didn't work, because right. I think that those guys had George R.R. Martin's list like this, like these are the plot beats you have to hit, and none of the extra notes around it.
Right. Yeah, so we're shorthanding this. So that's why I wanted to say, hey, look, listening to you read that list, I would be totally confused. There's a lot that went into us plotting offline. And that's why that's why I'm such a huge supporter of plotting, because if you don't have this stuff worked out, you can't make this comprehensive list. So like, okay, well, to accomplish that, we're going to make sure we have to, this is going to have to be introduced, and this is going to have to be world built, and this is going to have to be, we're going to have a scene that will show this, and we're going to have a scene that's going to bring this in, and so on and so forth. Also, something we need to have offline is, I just realized, and I don't want to discuss this. I'm gonna throw it out there, and then the next time we plot, we'll go down this path, because you're gonna instantly hate this idea. But I think I've got enough reasons to maybe win you over. I think there should just be one city, but I don't want to discuss it. Let's go on, continue on. I'll explain why when we get there. I just don't want to forget about it, because I just had it, and while you were going through that list.
So I can tell you now that I've had that argument internally with myself, like back and forth, like the advantages and disadvantages of having one city, having multiple cities. And we can absolutely have the discussion and see which one brings the best elements. Yeah, so I mean, that is a discussion I'm absolutely willing to reopen, because I did actually sit and debate that with myself.
Well, it didn't work with any of the other story ideas that we've gone down. But once again, just sitting here listening to you go down that, it just made me go, there's literally no value of multiple cities now. Like, it does keep them apart separately, but it's not that they're competing. And I think I got some ideas to fix, because that's where it is. This is a competition act. Yeah. But I've got some ideas that fix that. So we'll table that
So either we can fix the competition angle, or we do, but yeah. So we can discuss the various, because that'll be that's quite a long discussion with a lot of both sides.
Right. Exactly.
Kind of back and forth.
And we're now basically at time. So let's go ahead and finish this up and wrap it up.
So if we look at Buri's everyman, now Buri is our crafting maid. She's a maid. She makes magical items, but her magic doesn't work quite right. She has got a major handicap. Her magic, the baked goods that she makes has side effects. So they make people nauseous, or they make you mildly high, or they have all kinds of weird side effects. And her sister, who was the actual baker, has unfortunately gotten sick and is now in long-term care, which means that the bakery shop that they inherited from their parents are going under, because Buri doesn't have that level of skill at baking. So she has got a lot of guilt and all of those things going on. And she's just trying to survive on these loans that she takes out from the loan shark, as well as kind of, keeping her sister's spirits up and saying, look, I'll find a way to find enough juren to cure you, because the cure for this disease is to take sufficient juren to overclock. So her sister will go from being half adapted to fully adapted, which is the reason why Lyron's mom died, because Lyron's dad wasn't willing for her to go from human to half adapted. So Buri will also help us establish how the magic works, and all of that needs to be in her everyman setup, like how commoners live, and also, very importantly, the lottery system that gets people into this situation, and why the city works this way. So the cities don't have a tax, but they do have so they don't charge income tax, although they do gather money for certain things. But they have this lottery system where if they need something done, they select people who have the right skill sets. Those people are put on a team, and it's your job to go do it. That's part of your citizenship contract in the city. And so that whole thing needs to be explained and set up during Buri's everyman chapters. And then her inciting incident is this lottery gets her, and she's got to go get the noddy, and then the loan shark gives his demands. So let us know what you think of our new outlay, and whether you think that these characters sound interesting, and any thoughts that you might have. And otherwise, we will see you soon for another one.
Yep.